The Arizona Cardinals need to 100% pick up the fifth-year option for Isaiah Simmons.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please like, subscribe, turn the notifications on, leave a comment, do all that stuff on YouTube as well. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game. Dormant, small signings, couple offensive linemen, here and there, setting the stage for what's set to be fireworks in the draft. I'm going to talk about two mock drafts, one by Daniel Jeremiah, one by Mel Kiper. It's only 3.0. I mean, we're going to get to mock drafts 96.7 by the time the draft comes. But it's just interesting to see the evolution of what the Cardinals should do with the third pick in the eyes and minds of some of the smartest draft experts out there. Two differing opinions, Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper, with what the Cardinals will do with the third overall pick. I'll go in depth into both of those. But first, and I feel like it's very important to discuss this, as I've talked about, if this is your first time listening to Locked On Cardinals, thank you. Thank you, thank you. If you've been listening to me for a long time, thank you as well. I've talked a bunch about Isaiah Simmons. I talked about him last offseason, how if he took the step from year 2 to year 3 that he did from year 1 to year 2, he'd be a fringe Pro Bowler. Not necessarily the case. I feel like under the guise of a lost season, especially after Kyler Murray went out with the ACL tear, it's kind of difficult to grade Isaiah Simmons and a lot of other young defensive players. Byron Murphy walked, 2-year, $22 million with a very team-friendly structured contract because of the back injury, because he missed time at the end of the season. And begs the question, was he not playing because the Cardinals were out of the race, or was he really hurt? And I'm sure it was a combination of the two. Players tend to play through more pain when they're in contention. But with Isaiah Simmons, there's a couple things. One, you 100% need to treat this like the Haason Reddick situation. And let me explain. So that's the obvious comparison, the obvious tie between the two top 15 picks for the Cardinals, in 3 seasons separating them, I believe. That's the obvious conversation everybody's having, okay? But think about it this way. There's a lot of times where you have to trick your brain or train your brain to not compare two completely different players just because they were misused. And that's a fallacy where it's like, oh, well, this is exactly that situation. It's not, but the overall theme surrounding both is the dictionary definition of the misuse of talented players by the Arizona Cardinals as an entity, as an organization. So with that, it doesn't matter that Isaiah Simmons is much bigger than Haason Reddick on paper, measurables. It doesn't matter that they play different positions in college. It doesn't matter that Isaiah Simmons was used as safety last year and in coverage against some of the best tight ends in the game. It doesn't matter that it seems like Haason Reddick is closer to a traditional pass rusher than Isaiah Simmons. None of those things matter in this situation. Normally, will they? Of course. They're different players. But with the misuse of Haason Reddick, I think playing in 4 different defensive schemes in his last year in college and first 3 years in the NFL, to Isaiah Simmons, where he's had Vance Joseph gone. He's had an underwhelming offense. It didn't really set up the defense for success. And I know that that's where I tip my specific scale, blame pie, whatever you want to call it. And I know that a lot of it is on the player, where Isaiah Simmons, first play, his rookie year, Raheem Mostert, 75 yards to the house. We all remember that. So he had a long way to go. And the mismanagement of Isaiah Simmons from his first offseason, where he was playing with pretty much every defensive group, aside from, defensive linemen. Jack of all trades, master of none. All of those things was what we saw in a different way with Hassan Reddick. So, normally, different situations, you've got to trick and train your brain to not think the same about both players. Not in this instance. It's the Arizona Cardinals. It's the mismanagement. It's maybe they shouldn't have drafted either of those players. All of those things go in to the cauldron that is the Arizona Cardinals and the misuse of talent. So under that, you have to think of them as the same thing. While it's kind of turned around, while it's kind of a rudimentary way to think about it, it's the necessary way to think about it. So with that, they must exercise his fifth-year option without even thinking about it. Is it a lot of money? Over 14 or 15 mil? Yes. Cool. Do it. Is it Hassan Reddick? And is there a chance that it won't turn out the way Hassan Reddick turned out in Carolina, now in Philly? 100%. But every single person looking at Isaiah Simmons, who isn't a part of the Arizona Cardinals organization, is thinking the same exact thing. Oh boy, I hope they screw that up. What I could do with a player as smart and gifted and talented as Isaiah Simmons. Everybody is thinking the exact same thing. All general managers, all head coaches, all defensive coordinators. Oh boy, what I could do with Isaiah Simmons. So while the sticker price is a little bit more expensive than you want to exercise his fifth-year option, he was the 8th overall pick. You can't look at past experience, past performance as you're positioning yourself on whether you're going to exercise his fifth-year option or not. And again, rudimentary thinking and the necessary way to go about this, because it just gives you more wiggle room if Isaiah Simmons pops. And that's what the Cardinals desperately needed with Hassan Reddick. And this, I won't even fault Steve Keim. Nobody saw Hassan Reddick doing that in 2021. Come on. Or 2020. 2020? 2020? 2020. When Chandler Jones went out. Nobody saw that after his first 3 years. So, yeah, you could hang it on the, on the shelf for another Steve Keim blunder, but you can't fault him for that. What you can do, if you're the Arizona Cardinals, is be extra cautious with somebody who is, on paper at least, even more talented than Hassan Reddick. They have until May 1st. They should do it tomorrow. Exercise his fifth-year option and have another young player playing alongside Kazir White and Zaven Collins and really take a long look, regardless of record, for the Cardinals next season. If Isaiah Simmons should be an Arizona Cardinal for another 3 or 4 years after his rookie contract runs out. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. So there's another thing that I need to mention. I will discuss the mock drafts in the final segment. Budda Baker needs to be talked about. And I know that, it's free agency. Oh, what about some free agent targets? What about DeAndre Hopkins? Ain't going to be no splash signings by the Cardinals. So let's think about this with a broader lens. Let's think about this with the future in mind. because that's what the Cardinals are positioning themselves for. And Budda Baker needs to be a pillar for the Arizona Cardinals for the next 5 or 7 seasons. And the Cardinals need to make sure of that fact this offseason. Locked On Cardinals. We roll on, baby. You know where to find us. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, okay, so NCAA tournament, there's no better place, okay? Download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because a new customer, any new customer, you even, can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from, money line, point scorers, threes drained, etc. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Arizona Cardinals must exercise Isaiah Simmons' 5th-year option yesterday. Bite the bullet with the price. It'll give you 34 games of intense, under-the-microscope look at Isaiah Simmons, who could be, if unlocked, as everybody talks about, if utilized properly, a Pro Bowl linebacker in this league. He's got all the ingredients. He just needs the proper development. And you bring in former linebackers coach like Nick Rawls to be the defensive coordinator. You bring in Jonathan Gannon, the linebacker play in Philadelphia was incredible over the last couple seasons. Isaiah Simmons is in the perfect situation to thrive, finally. And they need another year after this year, which is probably going to be a Travis Shea mockery in the win-loss column, to really see in 2024 what they've got. Because remember, every single GM, head coach, defensive coordinator is looking at Zaven Collins or Isaiah Simmons from afar saying, man, I hope the Cardinals screw this up. Man, I hope they screw it up. And the Cardinals can't. Budda Baker needs to remain an Arizona Cardinal until he retires. And I'm not saying he should retire at 28. That's not what I'm saying. He has Larry Fitzgerald in him. Very different. He's much more demonstrative, much more vocal than Larry Fitzgerald was. Larry Fitzgerald is a dictionary definition of leading by example. Larry Fitzgerald is a top 3 receiver of all time. Budda Baker is not a top 3 safety of all time yet. Okay, so that direct comparison is not what I'm mentioning, not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is Budda Baker is the heartbeat of this team. Now, let's remove it should be Kyler Murray. Trade Kyler Murray. What about the quarterback? Stop it. I will even go as far to say, shut it. I'll do that today. Budda Baker is the heartbeat of this team. Monti Ossenfort has already spoke glowingly about Budda. He is well-respected around the league. He is a Tyrann Mathieu-like entity over the top on defense. They play a little differently, but at his peak, Tyrann Mathieu was exactly what everybody wanted from an employee, let alone, defensive player, let alone a safety. That's not that, or nickel corner, or, whatever. Budda Baker has 2 years left on his deal, 2023 and 2024. If I'm Monti Ossenfort, if I'm Michael Bidwell, if I'm Jonathan Gannon, I'm taking stock. I'm looking at the catalog, at the roster. Like, you know what? Not a we guy talking about the car. I'm not. You as fans can be. I won't. Monti Ossenfort looking at the roster, sitting down with Michael Bidwell and Jonathan Gannon saying, We need as many sure things on this roster for the next 5 years that we can get. As many as possible. And when I say as many as possible, it's not like being, flippant. It's like, well, you get a contract. You get a contract. That's not what I'm talking about. When you look at the roster, I talk about this from time to time. There are very few Arizona Cardinals on this roster. A lot of outsourcing. A lot of signing other players from different teams, trades, etc. The Steve Keim effect. When you look at this roster, pillars for the future, set and forget players on this team. Zaven Collins is emerging. We'll see about Isaiah Simmons, as I mentioned. You trust any of the receivers right now? Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch. Is Greg Dortch going to be wide receiver 1? Come on. DJ Humphries. We'll see if he'll be on the team post June 1st. He should be. But he'd be 1. Budda Baker's 2. Kyler Murray, 3. Out of 22 starters. Jalen Thompson, honorable mention. But you look at this, and you're Monti Ossenfort. You're like, I need my guys. Extending Budda Baker this offseason, and Budda Baker accepting the extension will cause many aftershock shockwaves across the NFL. Budda Baker trusts this organization. Maybe things are changing. I talked about this with DeAndre Hopkins as well. I tweeted out, if DeAndre Hopkins signs an extension here and the Cardinals it's going to create shockwaves. I don't think he will, but it's going to create shockwaves because you're going to see these high-profile players saying, you know what? I'm staying. I trust Jonathan Gannon. I trust Monti Ossenfort. Most importantly, I trust Kyler Murray. And if you look at Budda Baker, even though his performance dropped off a little bit last year, was injured towards the end of the season, if you look just at who he is as a person, if you haven't watched Hard Knocks, watch it. If you're surprised after watching Hard Knocks about that being who Budda Baker is, you aren't paying attention. And I'm assuming that that's not the case because he's just an assassin with a smile. I was lucky enough to interview him and Chase Edmonds at outside of Larry Fitzgerald's charity event a couple years ago. He just loves playing ball, man. Just loves playing ball. And I'll tell you what, if you played in the SEC, even if you played in the Big 12 in college, he'd be a much bigger name than people on the East Coast being asleep before kickoff when Washington would play Washington State at 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Eastern on Saturday night. Extending Budda Baker plants a flag in the sand saying he's an Arizona Cardinal. He's going to retire here. He trusts this new regime. So should you. I think it's paramount for this team moving forward. The Budda Baker will be on board. And I feel like it's something that if he doesn't, it's going to be problematic. Now, of course, we can wait, watch, look at the end of another reason why I say doing it this season is all people are going to be talking about next offseason is, what are they going to do with Budda Baker? And coming off what's set to be probably a pretty poor win-loss record unless Kyler Murray comes back in the first couple of weeks, it's going to make it a lot more difficult to validate extending him after what could be a 3-1 season. Alex Lancey, Locked On Cardinals, dueling mock drafts. Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper. Who had it right? Let's discuss next. First, this episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and if you've ever thought you'd make a good GM, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory trying to build a historic dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for coordinating the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want it. Locked On Cardinals listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty right now. The Arizona Cardinals must exercise Isaiah Simmons' fifth-year option. The Arizona Cardinals must extend Budda Baker this offseason. And the Arizona Cardinals must trade back from the number 3 overall pick. That's what we call a transition, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Please go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please go wherever you get your podcast. Leave a review. I had some Baltimore Ravens fans pissed off at me from like 3 years ago because I said Lamar Jackson wasn't incredible. One even quote tweeted my tweet and posted my personal address on Twitter. The only person that I've blocked is that sad person who did that. I don't even remember the person's name. But if you want to help your boy out, feel free. Leave a review. Daniel Jeremiah has the Arizona Cardinals drafting Will Anderson at number 3 overall. Okay. I am on the record myriad times as saying the Arizona Cardinals must trade back. They don't deserve to draft Will Anderson. They have many more needs. This is the clunky nature of the transition from Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury to Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, with 2023 being more of a culture shift, foundation building, trust inducing year. They should trade back as far as they can, in my opinion. Mel Kiper has the Arizona Cardinals moving down to 4. And then Will Levis getting taken by Indy with the 3rd overall pick. Cardinals taking Will Anderson 4. This would be teetering on the fence. You know, this would be getting Will Anderson and trading back. So I tweeted this out, and I think the latter is better. And Mel Kiper just threw this out there. The Cardinals would get a 2nd and 3rd in 2023 and move back 1 spot, which I think would be great. That's 2 second-round picks, 2 high second-round picks that if they wanted to, they could package and move back into the 1st round. Like, there's so much juice that can be flowing if the Cardinals get more draft capital in 2023. I tweeted this out, that the Cardinals' best friend now is another team that wants to make some noise in the draft, moving up and taking a quarterback, because there needs to be a bidding war for the 3rd overall pick. Carolina going to take a quarterback. Houston is going to take, whether it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, who's ever left, and then whoever wants Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. Hopefully Anthony Richardson buzz will continue. The Indianapolis Colts need to start shaking in their little space boots because they see another team that's further back. The Raiders, the Lions, Tennessee at 11 or 12. Who the hell knows? The 49ers moved up from outside the top 10 to the 3rd overall pick to draft Trey Lance. So what the Cardinals need here is another team not named the Indianapolis Colts to drive that stock up for the 3rd overall pick. Now, if they don't, and Indy just wants to be safe and will give up a 2nd and 3rd round pick in 2023, and the Cardinals can still get Will Anderson at 4, I feel like that would be the best of both worlds, unless, the Raiders offer a 2nd this year and a 1st and 2nd next year to move up to 7-3, and the Cardinals can still have an outside chance of drafting Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, or Devin Witherspoon, two high-end corners in the 2023 draft. We need to keep this in mind. You, me, and everybody, I think. Whoever the Cardinals draft, whatever position it is in the 1st round, as long as it's not a kicker, a running back, or a quarterback, safety, it's a win. Even if they draft a wide receiver, it's like, all right, I can see that. Offensive line, defensive line, edge rusher, corner, wide receiver, and probably tight end, not to draft the tight end, which they won't. But most positions that are available in the top 10, even though it's not your favorite Will Anderson or your favorite, some people think Tyree Wilson is going to be a better pro than him. Even if it's not what your favorite mock drafter is saying, that doesn't mean that it's not going to benefit the Cardinals. And if the Cardinals can move back, accumulate draft capital, and even, if they move back one spot and still can draft Will Anderson, so be it. You can be a little bit more flexible with the return you're going to get in the trade back if Will Anderson is going to still be on the table. This is part of the transition. This is the Arizona Cardinals as a 13-year-old wearing braces and having pimples and their voice not dropping yet. There's a lot of undoing and unraveling that needs to happen to be able to make this machine work effectively, efficiently, rationally, functionally, something that the Arizona Cardinals haven't really experienced over the last decade. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.